Dr. Fauci said that if hospitals get any more overcrowded, they're going to have to make some very tough choices about who gets an ICU bed. That choice doesn't seem so tough to me. Vaccinated person having a heart attack? Yes, come right on in. We'll take care of you. Unvaccinated guy who gobbled horse goo? Rest in peace, Wheezy. We still got a lot of pandemwits out there. Dr. Fauci said that if hospitals
let's listen to this a couple of times.
Very tough choices about who gets an ICU bed. That choice doesn't seem so tough to me. Vaccinated person having a heart attack? Yes, come right on in. We'll take care of you. Unvaccinated guy who gobbled horse goo? Rest in peace, Wheezy.
I'm going to stop it there. The only thing I want to highlight is the individual who tweeted this 5 times August, has been on the show, will be on the show again. The musician of our time, for the times that we're living through, tweeted this. And he's got a new album coming out on vinyl, for anybody who's into vinyl. He's got his album coming out. The most beautiful music you've ever heard. Like Bob Dylan meets COVID, meets the pandemic. Can we just appreciate one thing here? 2 things, maybe 3 things.
Dr. Fauci said that if hospitals...
Dr. Fauci said, it's like a little brother saying, but mom said, Dr. Fauci said that I'm entitled to act like an inhumane buffoon, so I'm going to go ahead and do it. That's number 1.
Dr. Fauci said that if hospitals...
I was just following orders.
...get any more overcrowded, they're going to have to make some very tough choices about who gets an ICU bed. That choice doesn't seem so tough to me.
Hey, let's do overweight people, Jimmy. I mean, you're looking good now, but let's do overweight people while you're at it.
Vaccinated person having a heart attack? Yes, come right on in. We'll take care of you. Unvaccinated guy who gobbled horse goo? Rest in peace, Wheezy.
The fake news about the horse goo. Now, I can't remember if it was ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine. It was ivermectin. The repeating the rubbish about the horse goo. What I love also is that he doesn't even make it clear that he's refusing entry to the hospital. In his ideal view of the world, the unvaccinated, it's not clear if the person in his hypothetical, inhumane, maniacal version of the world was even going to the hospital for COVID. It sounds like he was comparing 2 heart attack issues. If one wants to read it that way. Oh, heart attack? Okay, come on in. Heart attack, but unvaxxed goo eating thing? Okay, no. Let's just even assume he was saying, all right, someone who didn't get vaxxed comes to the hospital and needs treatment. And there's someone with a heart attack there. I'm sorry. What if the person's heart attack was from eating McDonald's 3 times a day for the last 20 years? That guy gets precedent. That guy gets priority over someone who wanted some form of medical autonomy, even if you happen to disagree with it. Herr Kimmel. Everything about this is wrong. And the way the crowd cheers like a bunch of buffoon clapping seals.
In peace, Wheezy. We still got a lot of pandemwits out there.
Hey, how did that pan out? Pandemwits. Oh yeah, that's right. Was that back in the day when Dr. Fauci was still saying it would prevent transmission? Was that back in the day when Fauci was saying you don't need to wear a face mask because they're useless before he said you need to wear a face mask? Was that back before Fauci denied funding through third-party NGOs, gain-of-function research in a lab in Wuhan, China? Was it before then, Jimmy? Oh, but Fauci said I get to treat other humans like animals, so I'm going to do it. Mengele said things also. Other historical doctors who have committed atrocities said things, and people, I can see it how it happened in real time. Oh, well, the doctor said so. Doctor said it's okay to do it. Doctor said it's okay to let someone die because they didn't do something I thought they should have done. The doctor said it. Oh, and by the way, the man's in there for a heart attack because he weighs 350 pounds, hasn't exercised a day in his life, ate deep-fried Twinkies and whatever. Oh, no. I'm not going to judge him. Or am I, Jimmy? In your next era of eugenics, do you then say people who are in the hospital for heart attacks because they're overweight? Sorry, if there's someone who's healthy, if there's someone who's genetically worthy of treatment, they get priority treatment. Never let anybody forget about the atrocities that not just people, but the people with the greatest powers and the greatest responsibilities owed to their fellow humans. Never let Jimmy Kimmel. Oh, he cried about a lion that got shot in what was the dog's name? Not the dog, the lion's name. He cried about a lion while he cheers on the death of fellow humans with whom he has medical disagreements. Never let him forget. It's up to you whether or not you want to forgive. I think forgiveness is a useful thing for the not so much for the person forgiven, but for the person who forgives, so they can, with any luck, try to cleanse some of that anger out of their heart. Now, I'm going to go to the chat here and put the link to Rumble. Link to Rumble here. Booyah. And we're going to pin this. Jimmy Kimmel. Yeah, no, that's it. I wholeheartedly condone medical discrimination, and then let them die, Wheezy. Yeah, Viva rocking the sideshow fro. Well, I washed my hair and brushed it yesterday, so the curls are sort of out. Then anyone who watched the local stream earlier knows that I then applied argan oil to my hair. So it's not quite the Soul Glow curls. It looks like a cotton ball went through the dryer, but it smells good. It feels good. And, I could go another week without washing my hair. The sky's falling. Good afternoon, Viva and friends. Deep fried Twinkies are fantastic, though. There's a lot of things that are fantastic. And I guess, a deep fried Twinkie every now and again is not an issue. The idea that you would predicate medical treatment for emergency medical treatment based on your moral judgment at the time. I mean, Jimmy must have forgotten when he wasn't necessarily the healthiest physiques of humans. Hey, as far as I'm concerned, why, if we're going to make medical judgments about people based on their life choices in terms of deciding whether or not they get treatment, why stop at that? Hey, do smoking, do drinking, do people who don't follow the recommended intake of meat. Oh, no, let's just have our very own discriminatory triage at hospitals. Oh, and by the way, Jimmy, above and beyond your Karl Malone impression from a while back, do you know who you would statistically be targeting with your inhumane? Would it qualify as eugenics policy? Whether or not it's eugenics. Do you know who you'd be targeting disproportionately, Jimmy Kimmel, through that policy? Black Americans. You would be targeting disparately minority Americans who are reluctant to get the jab because of the historical abuse from their very government. So congratulations, progressive Jiminy. Very progressive of you. You may as well have said, I am prepared to proportionately and disparately exclude Black Americans from the healthcare system who are statistically under-vaccinated for very good reasons, historically speaking. You are promoting racial discrimination, medical discrimination, and just outright inhumane policy. And your clapping seal of an audience loves it. No problem. No problem whatsoever. Oh, I thought his name was Trudeau. Oh, we're going to get there. Jimmy House says, I look fabulous. You look fabulous, darling. Thank you very much. So we're going to have a fun show today because it's a show. I have come to grips with the fact that it's a show. I've got to be done by 1:45. I've got things that need to be done in the afternoon. But at 1 o'clock, if it's not earlier, John Hogley, who you may remember from such prior streams as when he was on a stream, which mic I'm going to put this here to charge my phone. John Hogley is covering the Danchenko trial. And the Danchenko trial is the alleged source of the Steele dossier information to the FBI for spying on Trump. And he's been going to trial now because under Durham's investigation, he's another one who lied to the FBI. And that trial is over. It's in deliberation. Hogley was watching the trial. We're going to get his rundown on it. And we'll see. You watch these trials and you can just predict who's going to get acquitted and who's going to get convicted based on political affiliation. I'm just watching the Danchenko part of it, this Danchenko trial, and I'm like, I have difficulty predicting which way this is going to go because I don't know which side Danchenko is on, politically speaking. So Hogley's going to come on at 1 o'clock. And until then, we're going to go over a fake news story from the New York Times. Now, by the way, science is so decided, not only on climate change, individual events right now can be definitively pinpointed as being the result of climate change. Man-made climate change even when buried in the lead of the article, it says something somewhat different. And we're going to go over the inquiry, the Emergencies Act inquiry, because I said it on Twitter. I'll say if this does not sink Justin Trudeau, it will only be because he keeps his head above water by standing on the back of the wreckage of Canada. The Emergencies Act inquiry is going on day in and day out. Jim Watson, the mayor of Ottawa, was testifying today. And it's just mind-blowing what has been revealed in this inquiry, which is scheduled to last 6 weeks, which by design or by accident is going to bore most people out of watching it. It's going to allow mainstream media, the fully subsidized Canadian mainstream media, to pick and choose what they want, because in 6 weeks of trial, you can ignore a lot of damning evidence and nitpick a lot of convenient evidence. And you're not lying because you're not saying something that's wrong. You're just misleading through omission. When do we get the tacos? There will be no tacos at this Taco Tuesday. That being said, what there will be is, you may notice it says paid promotion. This video contains a paid promotion. 2 sponsors we got today. And I'm going to thank my sponsors sincerely and wholeheartedly, because it takes a little bit of courage, cojones, intellectual honesty, and defiance of a mob to say, I'm going to sponsor Viva Frei's content. And they're also easy products to sponsor because I use both of them. Starting off, the number one, anybody who owns their house. In America, your house is, generally speaking, the biggest asset of most people's portfolios. It's also, from what I have discovered, having moved down to the States, only temporarily, but we'll see what happens. It's a source of a lot of fraud, in that people will borrow money against a deed of your home. They won't change the deed and say, I hitherto own your house, but they will forge your signature and borrow money against your house. I double-checked this with my insurance guy, who said it's a real problem, and this is a real solution. Home Title Lock, I use it. They have the courage to sponsor my channel, but I use it more importantly than anything. And what it does is, if someone pulls your deed for the purposes of whatever, you'll get notified, and they will freeze the ability to borrow against that deed. So you'll get notified if someone goes to wherever to pull your deed of sale out, so they will not be able to borrow against your house, so that you will not get stuck with a $50,000 debt that someone got by forging your signature and borrowing against the equity of your house. $20 a month. And if you go and use the /Viva, HometitleLock.com/Viva, you'll get a $100 free assessment to make sure the title is securely in your name, after which point you can make a decision whether or not you want to spend the $20 a month to protect what is the biggest asset for most people. HometitleLock.com/Viva. Thank you all. I'll put the links in the pinned comment and the description after the video. And that's it. A product I actually use myself. Helps me sleep better at night. Okay. We're going to get to Field of Greens afterwards. But for now, let's go to let's just start off with the fake news. There's going to be an update in the Harvey Weinstein trial, which I'm not following thoroughly, but I'm following some developments. The fake news coming out of none other than the New York Times. Climate change, people, is now the boogeyman for everything and anything. It's gone from COVID to Trump to climate change. Anything that happens, by the way, there was a non-peer-reviewed study that came out 3 days after Hurricane Ian that said Hurricane Ian rainfall was 10% harder because of climate change. I mean, just imagine the absolute audacity it takes for anybody to make such a stupid statement. I'm not a scientist. Oh, and by the way, hashtag no medical advice, no legal advice, no election fortification advice. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. I am but a lawyer with a semi-functioning brain. Huffington Post wrote an article back in 2011 or 2012 that a small nuclear war could solve climate change. I'm not joking. They're a death cult. I'm not your buddy guy. We don't need to trust you. Although I do, because I've seen you around and I know that you're good. Trust but verify. Let's just go pull up that article, because I know exactly what you're talking about. Google. A small nuclear war. HuffPo. People are going to think it's here it is right here. Could a small nuclear war reverse global warming? Come on, get your ads out of there. Nobody wants to see. I'm joking, people. Well, whatever. We might not get past the ads. Nuclear war is a bad thing, right? I mean, the signs were all there beforehand that the world was going downhill. Huffington Post news. Nuclear war is a bad thing, right? Yeah. You know what? If you have to ask the question, you're an idiot. Scientists from NASA and a number of other institutions have recently been modeling the effects of a war involving 100 Hiroshima-level bombs, a 0.3% of the world's current nuclear arsenal. Oh, why would you measure this in relation to the world's arsenal and not the amount of people who were killed at Hiroshima and Nagasaki? Why would you go that way, HuffPo? Oh, it only killed, 80,000 people? Oh, but it only represents 0.03 of the world's arsenal. According to National Geographic, the research suggested 5 million metric tons of black carbon would be swept up into the lowest portion of the atmosphere. The result, according to NASA models, could actually be global cooling. Oh, you mean the global cooling that environmental alarmists were warning us about in the 70s? By the way, you know what else it would do? It would block out the sun and, just maybe cause humans to go the way of the dinosaur. This is news from Huffington Post. A small nuclear war could actually reverse global warming. Yeah. And also just kill 300,000-400,000 people, maybe more, probably more. By the way, some people do hypothesize, you know what else reverses global warming? Massive volcanic eruptions that emit dust into the atmosphere that deflect the sun and also cause a similar cooling, which tends to happen. It's sort of like that thing about the environment being constantly in flux. But no, it's not. It's not constantly in flux. It's always getting worse, and it's always at this point in history because of man-made climate change. This is an article out of the New York Times. And the original article is going to be behind their paywall, which I'm not paying, and I didn't archive it, although I'm sure someone did. But I clipped it. I got it at one point. Nigeria is suffering the worst flooding in a decade, largely because of heavy rains caused by climate change. 603 people have died. It's very serious. It is the worst flooding they've had in a decade. It's almost like once in a decade flooding. But let's just parse this out. Nigeria is suffering its worst flooding in a decade, which means that a decade ago, it suffered a worse flood or an equally bad flood. Largely because of heavy rains caused by climate change. Oh, I'm sorry. Here's the fact, heavy rains, and here's the opinion caused by climate change. By the way, and don't trust me, trust the article. Why? Well, first things first, if it's the worst flooding in a decade, does that not mean that climate change was worse a decade ago or just as bad a decade ago? And we had a decade where climate change wasn't a thing. From the article, just, burying the lead. New York Times, they don't mislead. They're not propagandists. They're not narrative-driven entities. It's news. Also this. The rain is not the only factor. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said not only was the rain the factor, the rain was the result of climate change. Every year, neighboring Cameroon, which runs along the length of Nigeria's eastern border, releases water from a dam in northern Cameroon, causing flooding downstream in Nigeria. At the time of the dam's construction in the 1980s, the two countries agreed that a twin dam would be built on the Nigerian side to contain the overflow, but the second one was never realized. And the truth shall set you free. I mean, I feel like Jim Carrey out of Liar Liar. Oh yeah, it's that rainfall caused by climate change. Oh yeah, and that small thing, that dam that they built in neighboring Cameroon, where they occasionally release the water and flood Nigeria. Oh, and that small thing that Nigeria was supposed to build its own dam so that they don't get flooded when Cameroon releases the water from the dam and floods Nigeria. No. You actually have to read the article to get past this bogus headline. Nigeria is suffering the worst flooding in a decade, largely because of heavy rains caused by climate change. First of all, I might just go out on a limb and say that it's largely because every year the neighboring country, Cameroon, releases water from a dam, causing flooding downstream in Nigeria. I might put the blame there. I guess that is man-made climate change, except it's very local, and it's almost like it's man-made incidents of negligence or whatever. Yeah, but no, don't worry. It's rain, heavy rain caused by humans, climate change, and you can't question it. You can't offer any other narrative, and you still have to be relatively honest in your misleading reporting. So bury the lead into the article. For anyone who gets past it, who gets into the actual article, who clicks, and reads and understands that pesky little thing of that dam in Cameroon, which gathers water, and when there's heavy water, they release it and flood downstream Nigeria. The death of one man is a tragedy. The death of a million is a statistic. Joe Stalin. I don't know if that's a joke. Wait a minute. What was Stalin's first name? It was Joe Stalin. Okay, I get the joke now. Joseph Stalin and Joe Biden. I think there's a double entendre in there. Fewer people were killed by the Hiroshima and Nagasaki nukes than were killed in the firebombing of Tokyo. That may be true, and I've heard that in multiple places. That doesn't change the fact that, hold on, let's just go double check. I think the number was 80,000. Chrome tab, Taco Tuesday. Well, they're gonna get an extra look. HometitleLock.com/Viva. Google, how many people died in Hiroshima? I think it was 80,000. Was it not 80,000? Counting the dead, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, 70,000. Now the question though is that immediately or in the aftermath, including the radiation that the New York Times, I believe the New York Times was actually claiming was not occurring after Hiroshima and Nagasaki. How many people died as a result of the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki? There is one thing that everyone who has tackled the question has agreed on. The answer is probably fundamentally unknowable. Okay, well, let's just get the early estimates. We saw the number 70. The Hiroshima Red Cross Hospital estimated 70,000 dead and another 50 to 60,000 dead within the next 2 months. Total 120. The British estimate, based on their own population estimates, that 70 to 90,000 people died at Hiroshima and an additional 100,000 were injured at Nagasaki. They initially estimated 40,000 killed. A lot, by the way. And for anybody who hasn't read The Gray Lady Winks, a good book to read, I believe the New York Times was also denying the fallout after the bombing of Japan because the military was, telling them, don't let the world know how horrific this is. Denies fallout, Japan, Hiroshima. I'm fairly certain. I know it is. Yeah, it was the New York Times who were, being the mouthpiece of the government that they are, were downplaying the fallout of the bombing in Japan because they, I guess the military had visions of continuing to do tests of nuclear bombs elsewhere, and they didn't want, they didn't want the world to know that the initial blast itself was devastating, and the fallout was equally devastating, horrific, and we know what happened now. But the New York Times at the time, being the propagandists that they have been, continue to be, and probably will always be, were spewing misinformation back then as well. Reading some of the chat. Well, okay, I'm not going to be able to follow the EMP. So, just when you read the news, you have to read it, and then you have to understand it. And the reality is that most people tweeting, retweeting, read the tweet, read the headline, don't read past it, carry on with this carry on with this narrative that climate change, man-made climate change, is not only undeniable, it is definitively attributable to every natural event that has occurred throughout the course of humanity. And the science is so accurate, they can actually attribute percentages to the increased severity as a result of man-made climate change. All right. Viva, EMP is just one of the effects of the nuclear holocaust. You don't know. I know the limitations of my knowledge, and I don't want to bring up a factually incorrect statement that I am not able to assess in real time. But I know the aftermath, whether it's nuclear poisoning, the aftermath where people were reporting that people were sick, dying after the initial blast. New York Times comes there, mouthpiece of the government, nothing to see here, move on, folks. And it's only decades later, or years later, decades later, that it becomes known. But the New York Times has done this throughout its history. And if anybody had any doubts, just read the Gray Lady Winks. They did it with Stalin. They did it with the Holodomor. They did it with the Nazis. They did it with the Holocaust. They did it with Japan. They did it with the Second Intifada or the First Intifada. They did it with I'm forgetting a big one in there. Testing nuclear weapons, I think, on the islands. They've done it time and time again, and yet somehow they still manage to maintain the reputation of the old gray lady, the standard in fake news. All right, from one fake news to the next. I'm saying from New York Times to Fox News, but at least Fox News has a bit of a better track record. Harvey Weinstein's trial is going on. There's a few law tubers covering it. I am not. For no reasons of aversion, just there's not enough time in the day. And at this point in time, even though it's not the most popular thing on the webs, the inquiry going on in Canada, which we're going to get to in a few minutes, is what's interesting me these days. Because, oh my God. Okay, but anyhow, so for those of you who don't know, it's Gavin Newsom's wife has accused Harvey Weinstein of assault of a very sexual nature. And they're, in the context of the accusation, allegedly, the alleged victim, 2 years after the alleged incident, was seeking advice from the person that she alleges sexually assaulted her. And Weinstein, Weinstein's defense team wants to use this to undermine the accusations, to say, if this had been the case, why would anyone who had been sexually assaulted approach their assaulter 2 years later asking for advice? And Harvey Weinstein is going to get to ask on this email that comes 2 years later. There's probably a number of reasonable, plausible explanations, but it's interesting law. And for anybody who wants to do these types of trials, you may think that Harvey Weinstein is guilty as sin and deserves all the punishment that this world and the next can bring to him. You still have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. You don't get to cut corners, and you don't get to pull the Alex Jones standard. Weinstein, loathsome, despicable person that he is and may be, is entitled to the fullest defense under the law, as his attorneys are entitled to make it within the bounds of ethics and legality. Harvey Weinstein's defense team secures a win, can use email from California Governor Newsom's wife in trial. 5 women, including Jennifer Siebel Newsom, will testify against Harvey Weinstein in his trial. Disgraced Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein was secured a partial victory in court today. It's a partial victory. It's a procedural one. Will it have any meaningful? Whatever. We'll see how it plays out. A judge said she would allow Weinstein's defense the opportunity to question the wife of Governor Newsom, Jennifer Siebel Newsom, about an email she sent to Weinstein 2 years after she was allegedly raped by the now 70-year-old man. It doesn't say man, by the now 70-year-old. Los Angeles judge Lisa Lynch ruled that the defense could ask about an email Siebel Newsom sent seeking media advice from Weinstein, but could not say it was about revelations of an affair that Gavin Newsom had with an aide when he was mayor of San Francisco. Just all appreciate the sordid, disgusting details of life in politics and life in Hollywood. I mean, just appreciate what we just read there, the different levels of this tiramisu of degeneracy. I'll even, you believe all victims? I'm let the process play out. But I'll grant, for the purposes of this thought experiment, We know enough about Harvey Weinstein to say that more likely than not, someone was up to some serious no goodness. Let's just flesh this out. Newsom's wife, who alleges Harvey Weinstein, this Hollywood producer, who she alleges raped her, she's asking for media advice from him, but could not say that it was about revelations of an affair that her husband had with an aide when he was mayor of San Francisco. I mean, this is Hollywood and this is politics for you. And I could even envision circumstances where Siebel's allegations or Newsom's allegations are true against Weinstein, but she would nonetheless have to do this because politics trumps morality. It's just like keep your schmeckle in your pants and live like your parents are always watching. How hard is that? I guess it's hard. I didn't mean any dirty pun with that. That was just it's like levels of repulsive immorality all put together in one. No honor among scoundrels. This woman, to the extent we believe that the allegations, is now compelled to contact this guy for media advice as to, at the time, how to deal with the fact that her husband had an affair with an aide. And said, my good God, is it hard to be good? Okay, it doesn't matter. That's forget the moral opinings. Weinstein's attorney, Mark Worksman, argued it was imperative to include the details, stating, arguing, of all things you'd think a woman that is raped by Harvey Weinstein wouldn't do, it's ask him how to deal with a sex scandal. Well, you know what the double-edged sword of that argument is, Mark? No. I mean, this is, it's immoral, it's disgusting, and there's no but, and nobody should have to say it. I think it's the exact opposite, Mark. Mark Worksman? Worksman, of all the people that you're going to want to ask for advice, how they got away with it for so long, how they pressured women into silence, how they got away with their wrongful conduct for decades, despite it being, as Seth MacFarlane put it, the best known secret to Hollywood. If there's one person who can give you that advice, it's going to be the guy who got away with it for so long. Tell us how to ruin the reputation of your accusers. Tell us how to threaten them and intimidate them into silence. Tell us how to do it. Who would know better than Weinstein? I wouldn't. Don't come to me for advice on how to hide a sex scandal, how to deal with it. I don't get into them. You know the person who you'd want to ask, the person who's gotten into it, that everybody knows has gotten into it, and yet somehow evades any form of justice for decades. That's exactly the person you'd want to ask for advice on how to conceal immorality. The judge disagreed with Worksman, suggesting he was overstating the case by saying Weinstein's due process was at stake. Siebel Newsom is one of five women Siebel is one of five women Weinstein has been charged with raping and sexually assaulting. This particular assault allegedly happened between 2004 and 2005 in a Beverly Hills hotel. It was reported that Weinstein's team will argue the relationship was consensual. Siebel Newsom is an actress. I don't know. I didn't know she was an actress or what she's in. Throughout the course of their marriage, Siebel Newsom has been outspoken on sexual assault and gender equality. The prosecution also secured a win on Monday, with the judge permitting the prosecution to play jurors a secret recording that another witness made of Weinstein in conjunction with New York police in 2015. In that recording, Weinstein apologizes for his behavior, and she said he had grabbed her breasts and touched her thigh. Well, that's Hollywood for you, and that's politics for you. Stay away from both. I guess is the moral. Yeah. Nasty people. This is from Darth Tater. Nasty people, let him use them for fame. They are all evil lizard goblins, which I assume is not a statement of fact, but rather an assessment, an opinion. So, anyways, that's it. Those are the two non-Canadian stuff stories, which are interesting. And voluntarist girl. I recall that avatar. How you doing? Agreed. There's going to be some. The question is going to be, from a legal moral perspective, when begrudgingly allowing that man to do things to you to further your career, when it's a quid pro quo or when it's intimidation of a man saying, whether or not it's coercion. All that to say, stay the hell out of Hollywood. Stay the hell out of politics. Hollywood is a cesspool just like DC. Mark. Well, you know what? Before we move on to Rumble, because we are going to go to Rumble exclusively. And speaking of cesspools, let me see here. We're good. Speaking of cesspools, and I'm only thinking of swamp water. Now I'm thinking of swamp water, and another sponsor with courage, audacity, and I think deserves credit for it. It's another product that I genuinely use. I have it right here next to my desk. Field of Greens. Field of Greens, by the way, if you use the promo code, you'll get 15% off your first order, 10% off recurring orders. Field of Greens, powdered green industry is a big industry right now. They're not all equal. Powdered greens, Field of Greens is not a supplement and it's not an extract. It is desiccated, pulverized actual vegetables and fruits, antioxidants, all the good stuff. Pulverized, desiccated, dried into a powder. It's a food, which means that it's USDA organic. Well, it doesn't mean that, but it's USDA organic approved, which only applies to foods and not extracts and not supplements. It's a food. One spoonful is one serving of vegetable. It may not look appetizing because it looks like swamp water, but it's good. It is good. And it's good. Distraction in the afternoon. Get an extra glass of water. Get a serving of fruits and vegetables. Fieldofgreens.com. Promo code Viva Frei. I have to make sure it's Viva Frei or Viva. Damn it. Hold on. Let me just make sure what the promo code is. So I'm not a total idiot. Although I'm getting there. Field of Greens. Let me just make sure what the promo code is. Viva, not Viva Frei. Viva. 15% off your first order, 10% off all recurring orders. And it is not like drinking Metamucil. Back in the day when I was having stomach stuff, I was told to drink Metamucil. That stuff is hard to get down. Field of Greens, it actually tastes good. One spoonful, one serving of fruits and vegetables, and you do it twice a day, and it's good for you. And it tastes great. End of story. All right, let us now mosey on over to the Rumbles. Here, link to Rumble, and we're going to go over some of the clips, the highlights of this inquiry of Canadian politics. It's highlighting the fact, I'll give a little teaser here on YouTube before everyone goes over. Canada is plagued by incompetence, corruption, arrogance, pomposity, elitism at the political, municipal, federal, and spiritual level of people who view their principality as that which can never be touched by the unclean. And we're going to get to it. There's been some highlights which, if the media were independent, they would be bombshells. They are bombshells, but they would be bombshells that the media would be amplifying. I just think it's fortunate that I think I actually have a reach that, if it's not almost as big as some of these MSM Canadian outlets, it's big enough. So I can put it on blast. Move on over to Rumble, people. I'm going to end it on YouTube in 3, 2, 1.